Today we will be talking more on power and use of influence to steer the team. Now, as we all know, leadership is the process of influencing others to understand and agree about what needs working to be done, how it is to be done, and the process of facilitating the individuals and collecting the efforts to accomplish the shared objective. Now, there is a use of power and there is a use of influence. So, we have to see what kind of power and influence the leaders have to take into consideration for achieving the desired outcomes. Power is the ability of one person or department in an organization to influence the other people to bring about the desired outcomes. On the other hand, influence is the process by which people persuade others to follow their advice and suggestions. We use the power because we want the things to be in a particular direction, fast decision making, and having a frequent contact with the decision maker, structure the organizations, assisting the managerial process, and articulation and achievement of the goals. So, if there is a use of the power, it actually have the positive impact, like leadership responsibilities are nicely taken care of. There is a achievement of organizational and the personal goals. It inspires the commitment, creativity, and also removes the bureaucratic obstacles. So, as a leader, you should not be indulging yourself into the sexual harassment, the overall bullying of the bosses, etc. It is the ability, when you talk about the power, it is the ability of one person or department in an organization to influence the other person to bring about the desired outcomes, and the effect of a person's action have to be on the attitude, value system, beliefs, and the action of the others. There is a huge difference between the use of the power and the use of influence. In the case of use of power, there is no option given to the team members but to follow the directions. Whereas, if you use the influence, you have a persuasive way. Otherwise, the team members would not have taken that particular way. But since you are persuading them, so people will move in that particular direction. Now, moving on to the 6 power sources, that is from where the power comes. Power comes from a variety of places, each with its own set of repercussions on the people it affects. Some are based on the personal attributes, while others are based on organizational structure, that is legitimate, referent, expert, reward, coercive, and informational power. These are 6 vital categories of the power. Let us see them one by one. The first and the foremost what we are going to discuss is the power that is legitimate. This is also called as positional power, and it refers to the influence that the individuals have as a result of their function and the status within an organization. Formal authority assigned to the holder of the post is frequently associated with the legitimate power. Like, for example, the president of a corporation has certain powers because of the office he holds in the corporations. The next is your power of referent. This is the second category of the power. Individuals' ability to attract others and cultivate their loyalty is referred to as a referent power. It is based on the power holder's personality and interpersonal abilities. A person may be admired for a particular personality feature such as charismatic and likability, and these favorable feelings serve as the foundation for interpersonal influence. The examples of the referent power are nationalism, patriotism, celebrities, mass leaders, and widely respected people. The next category of the leader's power is expertise. Expertise is very valuable. Expert power is derived from a person's abilities and knowledge, and it is the most effective when an organization has a strong need for them. Expert power is often applied solely in the specific field of the person's skill and trustworthiness, which is narrower than most type of the power. So next is your power of reward. The power of reward is simply the power of a manager to give some types of reward to an employee as a means of influencing the employee to act. When you talk about the reward system, we have two types, tangible and intangible. The ability to provide valuable material prices or create other positive incentives confers the reward power. It refers to an individual ability to provide external motivation to others in the form of the advantage or the gifts. The promotion raises in pay or additional time off may be used to motivate employees in the workplace. Some of the examples of the tangible rewards are as follows. We have the monetary rewards, we have the wage and the salary increases, bonus, we have the certificates, models and the gifts. So these are the tangible rewards. Similarly, we have the intangible rewards also, which are very, very effective. Like when you praise as a boss and your team members are very happy with your praise, or for the positive feedback you get, for the recognition you give, for more responsibly including a rise in the status, well-timed thank you. All these are the examples of the intangible rewards. Now the next category of the power is the coercive authority. Coercive is about threatening and enforcing the sanctions and other negative consequences, which is referred to as coercive power. Direct punishment, withholding of a desired resources or the rewards are examples. Like fear is used by coercive authority to coercive cooperation. The examples of the coercive power are threat of write-ups, that is, you add a negative paper in the file of the subordinates. There can be use of demotions, that is, when you demote a person from the hierarchy of a management structure to a lower level. There are pay cuts, layoffs, or probably a termination if the employee does not follow the orders. These are the coercive power, which is a use of a negative influence on the team members. They will always have this kind of a fear that they might be a victim of any kind of a wrong write-up, demotions, power cuts, termination, etc. if the orders are not followed. Now we have the informational strength, the access to the data and the knowledge that others find useful or the valuable gives your informational power. This access can suggest the links with the other power players and convey a positive image of the status. Informational power aids in the development of the credibility and the reasonable persuasion. It could also be the starting point for the successful exchanges with others who are looking for the same information. All of these sources and the use of the power can be combined to achieve a single goal, and the people frequently use more than one of them. In fact, the stronger a person's total power and capacity to get the things done, the more sources of power he or she has the access to. Then we have a tactics of the strength. To persuade or prompt others to act, people employ a range of the power strategies. These strategies can be classified into three categories: behavioral, logical and structural. So there are two types of behavioral tactics, soft and hard. The soft techniques take use of a person's relationship with their target. These strategies are more direct and personal, and they may include collaboration or other forms of social engagements. Then we have the hard tactics. What does it mean? The hard tactics, on the other hand, are the severe, aggressive and direct, as they rely on the concrete results. They are, however, not always more effective than the soft techniques. In many cases, the threat of a social isolation is a far more powerful motivator than any form of a physical punishment. Now we have some importance of persuasion in leadership. Let us have a look on this. When others have an impact on the personal feelings, opinions or behavior, this is known as influence. It's a very crucial part of a leader's capacity to wield the influence and maintain the respect in the workplace. There is an importance of persuasion in the leadership. The peer pressure, socialization, compliance, obedience and persuasion are the fine examples of influence, which is definitely a preferred way of leadership. The capacity to influence others is a very valuable asset for the leaders as well as for the individuals in sales, in marketing, in politics and in law. According to Herbert Kellman, a Harvard psychologist, he identified 3 types of social influence in the year 1958. The first is the compliance, the second is the identification and internalization. The compliance refers to the people doing in the ways that others expect them to work, whether or not they agree with it. So complying with the crossing guards or authority figures' orders is an example of compliance. And when the people act in the ways they believe are valued by those who are well liked and respected, such as a celebrity, they are said to be identified. So identification is influenced by the status. When people buy something that many others want, such as the latest smartphones, they are influenced by identification. Internalization is the third aspect. It occurs when people embrace a particular belief or a set of values, either explicitly or secretly, which leads to conduct that reflects those beliefs. Following one's own religion, tenets is an example. Now, how do leaders use the persuasion? Is a big question mark. A leader can use these 3 sorts of influence to encourage the employees and achieve the goals in an organization. For example, when employees are required to obey the regulations set by their superior, compliance is a particular technique of keeping order in the workplace. Otherwise, there will not be any kind of an order. It can be chaotic sometimes. Identification occurs when the people try to copy and follow the actions of the persons they admire and respect, such as a more senior co-worker or a trusted boss. Internalization occurs when the people accept a leader's vision and principles and make a commitment to achieving them. Now, basically, there are 7 principles of asserting the leader influence. The first is use of rational persuasion. Make people like you. Rely on the rule of reciprocity. You have to develop the allies. You have to ask for what you want. You have to remember the principle of scarcity and extend the formal authority with expertise and credibility. So there are different ways and means to assert the leadership influence, which are already important to be kept in mind if you want to be successful as a leader. First of all, you have to develop a very rational persuasion amongst the team members that they are ready to follow a particular way because of the persuasive skills which you have adopted and endorsed on them to move in a particular direction. And you have to do something with your personality that people start liking you and they feel your presence in a very positive way, not taking you in a very negative way. So if people start taking you in a very positive way, they will start liking you and they will start following the way you want them to move on or their particular movements in a particular direction to achieve the shared goals. And of course, you have to rely on the rule of reciprocity, that is, you have to do something for them and they also have to do something for you. So it's a kind of a reciprocity relationship which has to be actually spread by a leader. He has to develop certain allies, and developing the allies will facilitate his way to move on as far as the shared objectives are concerned. You have to be sometimes very explicit to tell to your team members that this is what I want. Because of your not being direct, there can be a situation of a confusion and ambiguity in many cases. So if a leader is very explicit in the way he wants the team to move on, it is good for him. Then sometimes you have to remember the principle of scarcity, because you are dealing with the scarce resources and you want the team to optimize the resources to move in a particular direction and achieve the particular goals of the organization. Then you have to extend the formal authority with the expertise and credibility. Now moving on to the sources of the personal power, that is from where the personal power comes. The first is because you are an expert in your field, that is the expertise, because of the attraction, because of the efforts, and because of the legitimacy. Now let us see these one by one. The personal power because of the expertise, the power of knowledge, capability, experience. The followers can have more expert power than the leaders in certain situations. Then the personal power comes from the attraction, that is appeal one has due to the charismatic, agreeable behavior and the physical characteristics. It includes the admiration as well as the respect. Then the personal power comes from the effort, that is the potential to influence others due to one's commitment and motivation, built through a reliable performance and the willingness to assume a greater responsibility. Then we have a legitimacy, that is the credibility due to one's actions mirroring a group values and others are willing to be influenced by those deemed legitimate. Proper adherence to the customs and the courteous helps to build this power base. Now the sources of the positional power can be because of the centrality, flexibility, visibility, and the relevance. Now, what is the centrality? Based how the central your position is within a unit. The more central your position is to flow of the information throughout an organization, and the more critical an assignment is to the others in an organization, the more power you have. Similarly, the positional power, centrality. What is centrality? That is the horizontal networks. Link people at a similar levels. Examples: knowing a fellow officer in another section allows you to informally discuss the work issues with him or her without any kind of a formal procedure. Then we have the vertical networks, that is the linking people with the different levels of authority. Then we have the positional power, that is the flexibility. The amount of discretion vested in a position, it involves the freedom to exercise judgment, enable the leaders to make decisions without specific approval, the degree to which the task performance is seen by influential people in the organization is the positional power, which we call it as visibility. Be visible to leadership, get out from the behind your desk, get involved with the subordinate and the peers. Next is your positional power because of the relevance. Direct result of how important your job is to group central objectives. The power of a position is relative to how critical to an organization mission is perceived to be. So, let us have a recap of the sources of power which we have discussed. In case of personal, it is positional. In case of expertise, it is centrality. It is because of the attraction that we have the flexibility, effort because of the visibility, legitimacy because of the relevance. Now you have to actually transform the power into influence if you want to be a very successful leader. Now there are some strategies for transforming the power into the influence. The 3 R's, that is the retribution, reciprocity, and the reason. The influence strategy, that is the retribution, that is force others to do what you want to do, that is a direct approach. Coercion, threaten, indirect approach, intimidation. Now there are certain pros and cons relating to the influence strategy, that is the produces immediate results is the plus point, task accomplished according to the manager's resentment and alienation specifications. Now there is a flip side, there is a dark side of the influence strategy, that is the retribution, that is it stiffs the initiative and innovation, insecurity of boss endangers, and it must increase the seriousness of threats to maintain the pressure. The second of the influence strategy is your reciprocity out of the 3 R's. It helps want to do what you say to do, that is the direct approach, bargaining exchange, and then indirect approach, that is the ingression or obligate. When the both parties benefit, that is the justification for request not required, that is the implicit in bargaining, and it requires trust, that is it endangers the instrumental view of the work, that is the expectation of the specific reward for specific actions, and the undercuts group commitment. Then we have the last R, that is the reason. It shows others that it makes sense to do what you want to say, that is the direct approach, present facts or needs. Indirect approach, appeal to personal values or the goals. So the pros are, it is having a higher compliance and job satisfaction, commitment to group principles, and the low level of stress. Whereas the dark side or the cons relating to this particular reason strategy is it takes time to build trust and the manipulation disguised as persuasion. Then we have the influencing strategy reason. Use for upward and outward influences, sell important issues appropriately, and shield the subordinates from unnecessary pressures from above and outside the organization. The team up, lead up, and be straightforward. So team up is all about gathers the apply for credibility. Lead up is about display the open-mindedness, support and trust, and be straightforward, that is gain superiors' attention for being trustworthy. So what are the keys to transform the power to influence? You have to establish the power through both the personal as well as the positional characteristics. You have to transform the power into influence using 3R influence. Up or down the chain should be good for the group, not the personal ambition. Use retribution in crisis, that is emphasize the reciprocity and the reason. So we can say that responses of the use of the power is because of the appropriate use, that is compliance, and excessive use is all about the resistance. There is a response of the use of the power position, that is the personal power leads to commitment. Then we have the dependency. If a person has control over the resources that is desired, he or she gains the power, that is the information, cooperation and resources. So we have certain politics in the organization, that is the activities to acquire, develop and the use of the power and other resources to obtain the desired future outcomes when there is uncertainty or the disagreement about the choices. Then we have the impression management, that is the people seek to control how others perceive them, and the executive presence that impact you have when you walk into a room. So there are basically 7 principles which we have discussed today about asserting the power. And how do people respond to the organizational politics? It leads to the decreased job satisfaction, increases the anxiety, increases the turnover and reduce the performance. So you have to tackle the organizational politics in a very important ways, certain use of the defensive action and certain use of defensive behavior, that is avoid action, over conforming, buck passing, playing dumb, stretching tails and avoiding the blame game. Then of course you have to play very safe and avoid any kind of a change, and you have to do a self-protection. So in the last there is a good thought which I want to share. A good thought, whosoever knows how to restrain and effectively release the power finds that power flows back to him.